I'm Victoria. Sitting in this new condo, which is mine in the truest sense, I can't help but let my mind wander back to that fateful dinner, the one that shattered my illusions and set me on a new path. It was a Thursday afternoon, and the cold, damp Seattle air clung to me like a second skin. I stepped into the private conference room in my grandfather's building, the neutral territory he'd chosen for the showdown. The room was hushed, the air thick with anticipation. A long wooden table dominated the center, and at its head sat my grandfather, his face a mask of stoicism, though the tension in his jaw gave away his sleepless nights. As I entered, his eyes met mine, and a softening of his features let me know I wasn't alone in this. He reached out, squeezed my hand briefly, and released it, whispering, "You're not alone today." The door swung open, and in walked my parents, Evelyn and Robert, and my sister Sophia. Evelyn marched in with purpose, her shoulders squared, her face set in the familiar expression of someone trying to appear blameless. Robert followed, his eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. Sophia trailed behind them, clutching her designer purse, a look of confusion and worry etched across her face. She'd been told there was a family issue to sort out, clueless that she was an unknowing part of it. "Father," Evelyn began sharply, "I have no idea what this is about, but dragging us into some formal—" Grandfather held up a hand, a simple gesture that commanded silence.
"Seat."
They sat, and just then Mr. Thompson, my grandfather's lawyer, closed the door behind them. He walked to the center of the room, a thick stack of statements in his hand, and placed them on the table with a resounding thud. The sound echoed through the room like a death knell. Sophia flinched, Robert swallowed hard, and Evelyn's eyes widened in shock. "Those are your signatures, Mr. Thompson said calmly. "Over 25 years, worth of withdrawals, transfers, and payments drawn from the trust fund intended solely for Victoria." The room fell silent, and then Mr. Thompson began to read. Year 1 mortgage payments. Year 2 home renovations, a new kitchen. Tuition fees, not for Victoria. Car leases, vacation expenses, and the rent for Sophia's luxury apartment. With each word, a sense of clarity washed over me. It wasn't joy, nor was it just anger. It was the blinding realization of a truth that had been hidden from me for far too long. Evelyn's face paled. "This is being taken out of context," she stammered. Mr. Thompson didn't hesitate. "The context is financial abuse of a beneficiary. The audit is complete." I stared at her, at the woman who had spent my life telling me I was too sensitive. She wasn't speaking to me. She was fighting for her image. Robert finally spoke, his voice weak. "We used the money for the family. It wasn't personal." A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "Not personal? When my car broke down and I begged for help, was that not personal? When I couldn't afford textbooks in college and you refused to assist, was that your idea of family?" He flinched as if I'd struck him. Evelyn drew in a breath, her chin lifting defiantly. "Victoria, we always intended to put the money back. When you were older, say 40 or 50. Or never," I retorted. Grandfather leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "You stole from a child." Evelyn's throat bobbed. "Father, we had bills." "We all have bills," he said coldly, "but not everyone steals from their own daughter to pay them." Sophia finally found her voice. "Mom, Dad, you used her money for my apartment for my school." Her voice cracked with emotion. "Darling," Evelyn said shakily, "we wanted you to have every opportunity, and Victoria, she's always been so independent." I leaned in, my voice low and steady. "I didn't ask because you made it clear I couldn't. Every time I needed help, you made me feel like a burden." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with all the unspoken truths they could no longer deny. Grandfather tapped the table once. "I am revoking your financial authority effective immediately." Evelyn jolted. "You can't do that." "I can," he said, his voice ice cold. "And I have." Robert slumped in his chair, as if the weight of 25 years of deception had finally crashed down on him. Sophia stared at the table, her hands covering her mouth in shock. Mr. Thompson slid a set of documents towards me. This transfers full control of the remaining trust assets to you. Your parents' access is terminated permanently." Evelyn's breath hitched, and Robert closed his eyes. Sophia whispered, "Oh my God." My hand hovered over the pen. For a moment, I wasn't just signing a document. I was signing away the past and embracing a new beginning. I pressed my name onto the page. Evelyn's chair scraped loudly as she stood. "Victoria, please, this will ruin us." I looked up at her, seeing her clearly for the first time. "Then maybe you shouldn't have built your life on money that wasn't yours." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Her legs shook, and Robert reached out to steady her, but his hand trembled too. They looked on the verge of collapse. For the first time, I felt no guilt. I wasn't the quiet daughter holding the family together anymore. I was the one tearing down the web of lies they'd spun. As the meeting ended, the room felt hollow, as if all the lies had been scraped off the walls, leaving nowhere to hide. My parents walked out first, Evelyn trembling, Robert barely able to support her. Sophia lingered, looking at me with a mixture of guilt and something that almost resembled apology. She opened her mouth, closed it, and then finally whispered, "I didn't know, Victoria." I nodded. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. To understand how I got here, I have to go back. I grew up in a household that seemed perfect on the surface. My parents lived in a large house in the wealthy neighborhood of Mercer Island. The lawn was always immaculate, and the holiday decorations were the envy of the block. But beneath that perfect facade lay a family breaking at the seams. I lived in a small apartment in Seattle with my roommate Ava. She worked at a trendy downtown cafe, always smelling faintly of freshly brewed coffee and vanilla. She was the only one who witnessed the endless nights I spent hunched over my laptop, freelancing to make ends meet. She used to joke that I ran on caffeine and stubbornness, but she also knew that I had no one else to turn to. Meanwhile, Sophia was the golden child. She had private schooling, expensive vacations, and a paid-for apartment, so she could focus on her studies without a worry in the world. I was told that independence would make me strong, that I didn't need handouts. When I needed help signing a lease because my credit history was thin, my mother said, "Victoria, we can't help you every time. You need to stand on your own 2 feet." As if I'd ever asked for more than the bare minimum. But despite everything, I kept going to family dinners, holidays, and birthdays. A part of me held on to the memories of my grandfather, Henry. He had a gentle smile, warm hands, and a voice that soothed my soul. When I was 8, he took me to the beach near our house and said, "One day, I'll make sure you're safe, no matter what." I clung to those words without realizing they were a promise he intended to keep. My 29th birthday dinner was supposed to be a simple, elegant affair, according to my mother. The restaurant had a private room with soft lighting and white tablecloths, everything arranged like a scene from a magazine. I arrived straight from work, still in my work clothes, my hair tousled by the Seattle wind. My mother gave me a cursory look and then turned to smooth Sophia's perfectly styled hair. Sophia flashed me a smile, completely oblivious to the undercurrents in our family. Dinner was like every other family gathering. Sophia talked about her latest adventures. My mother beamed with pride, my father sipped his wine quietly, and my grandfather watched with an expression I couldn't read. I focused on my food, keeping my posture straight, trying to ignore the subtle jabs. My mother commented on how resourceful I'd become, in that tone that implied my life was a result of poor choices. "Victoria's always been so independent," she said, smiling at the couple next to us. "She never asks for much." It was meant to sound like praise, but it felt like a slap in the face. Across the table, Sophia twirled a diamond bracelet, a gift that was far beyond my reach. She launched into a story about a weekend getaway, a trip my parents had paid for. My father chuckled and said, "She deserves it after working so hard." I blinked, knowing that she'd been taking a break from her part-time job for weeks. The flashbacks came flooding back. The time my bike was stolen, and I had no way to get to work, and my mother told me to figure it out on my own. The time I couldn't afford a new winter coat, and she said I should make do with the old one. Then, as the server refilled our glasses and the room grew quiet, my grandfather lifted his glass. Victoria, he said gently, show me how you've used your $5 million trust fund after 25 years. The room fell silent. Laughter stopped mid-breath, forks froze, and even the candles seemed to still. I felt my heart pounding in my ears as I whispered, "What trust fund?" My grandfather's smile faded. "The one I set up for you when you were 4. It was meant to give you security, choices, and a life free from hardship." My throat tightened. I never got one. An audible gasp filled the room. Sophia's smile fell apart, my father's jaw clenched, and my mother stared at me as if I were a stranger. In that moment, I realized that someone at the table was afraid, and it wasn't supposed to be that way. My mother was the first to recover. "Dad, I'm sure Victoria misunderstood. She's always so scattered." As if I'd imagined 29 years of struggling alone. My grandfather looked at me, his eyes filled with disappointment, but also with determination. "Victoria, meet me in my office tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. It wasn't a question. I walked out of the restaurant before anyone could stop me. The cold air hit me like a punch in the gut, but I kept walking. I didn't cry. I just kept repeating, "I never got one." By the time I reached my car, my hands were shaking. My phone buzzed. It was Ava. "How was dinner?" she asked. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. The silence said it all. "Come home," she said softly. "We'll figure it out." But I knew this was something that had been hidden for far too long. The next morning, I took the bus into downtown Seattle. The city was just waking up, the fog still lingering on the streets. My grandfather's office was on the top floor of a glass skyscraper. It was warm and quiet, with a faint smell of mahogany and old books. He was sitting in a leather chair, a folder on his lap. His face was not angry. It was filled with disappointment. "I set up a trust fund for you when you were 4, he said. $5 million, meant to be your safety net. You should have had access when you turned 18. My heart sank. 18? I'd spent that birthday working a double shift at a diner. Why didn't I know about it? He handed me the folder. Inside were pages of withdrawals, transfers, and payments, all signed by my parents. For 25 years, they'd used the money for their mortgage, luxury vacations, Sophia's education, and her lifestyle. Everything I'd ever dreamed of, but was always told was out of reach. I felt a searing pain in my chest. All those years of hard work, of begging for help, of feeling forgotten, it wasn't fate, it was theft. Grandfather leaned forward. "I've hired a legal team. Mr. Thompson will conduct a full audit, but it's up to you how far you want to take this." I stared at the signatures of the people who were supposed to love and protect me. "I want everything," I said. "Every record, every receipt, every dollar. I want the truth." He nodded slowly. "Then we'll call them in for a meeting." "I want to be there," I said. "You will be," he promised. Over the next few weeks, Mr. Thompson finalized the legal transfers. The remaining trust assets were now in my name. My parents were notified of the potential legal consequences if they tried to interfere. My grandfather visited me in my new condo. He walked through the rooms, his hand grazing the walls. "You deserve this," he said. "You always have." I didn't tell him that I'd cried the first night, a mixture of grief for the family I never had and relief for the life I could finally build. I've learned that family isn't about blood. It's about honesty, accountability, and those who stand by you when the truth is hard to face. I don't hate my parents. I don't think I ever will. But I've also learned that sometimes distance is an act of love for myself, for the life I'm finally free to create. If you've ever had to walk away from those who are supposed to care for you, know that you're not alone. Your story matters, and your boundaries matter. Share your experiences in the comments, and if this story resonates with you, follow the channel so you won't miss the next one.